You've been lied to about manifestation, and it's costing you everything you want. Subscribe right now, smash that like button, and drop a comment, because what I'm about to reveal goes against every single law of attraction guru out there. They've been teaching you to chase, to beg the universe, to raise your vibration like you're trying to win some cosmic lottery. Meanwhile, the real secret has been hiding in plain sight for over 70 years, and it's so simple it's gonna make you angry you didn't know this before. Here's what's actually happening while you're out there affirming and visualizing and waiting for signs. You're reinforcing the very gap between you and what you want. Every time you say, "I'm trying to manifest money," you're literally telling your subconscious mind that you don't have money. Every time you visualize your dream life as something separate from you, as something you're moving toward, you're creating distance. And the universe doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to who you are being right now in this moment. If you're being someone who's trying to get something, guess what you're going to keep experiencing? Trying to get it. I spent 3 years doing everything the manifestation coaches told me to do. Vision boards plastered all over my walls, affirmations every morning, gratitude journals, raising my frequency with binaural beats. You name it. I was the perfect student. And you know what I manifested? More waiting, more searching, more proof that I didn't have what I wanted. I was broke, stuck in a job I hated, watching everyone around me succeed while I was doing all the spiritual work. Then I found Neville Goddard's teachings, and everything I thought I knew about reality shattered in the best possible way. After studying over 200 of Neville's lectures and testing his methods for the past 4 years, I've documented something that's going to change how you see manifestation forever. This isn't about attracting anything. It's about assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled right now, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do it in a way that actually works. Everyone's teaching you that manifestation works like placing an order with the universe. You want something, you ask for it, you align your energy, and then you wait for delivery. This is the biggest misconception destroying people's ability to create their reality. And it's based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how consciousness actually works. The law of attraction makes you a beggar standing outside the door of your own kingdom, asking permission to enter what's already yours. Neville Goddard flipped this entire paradigm on its head with one radical statement, and once you understand this, you'll never approach manifestation the same way again. Neville said, "Assumption hardens into fact." Not vibration, not asking, not attracting, assumption. He discovered through decades of testing that consciousness is the only reality, and everything you experience in the physical world is just consciousness pushed out. Your entire life right now, every circumstance, every relationship, every dollar in your bank account is a perfect reflection of the state of consciousness you've been occupying. If you're experiencing lack, it's because you've been assuming lack. If you're experiencing limitation, you've been wearing limitation like a suit of clothes. The revolutionary part is that you can change your entire reality by simply changing your assumption about yourself right now in this moment. And here's the part that's going to change everything for you. Neville taught that the feeling is the secret, not the visualization, not the words, not the technique itself. The feeling of already being the person who has what you want. When you assume you already are that person, when you wear that state like it's your natural condition, your entire outer world has no choice but to reorganize itself to match that inner conviction. But wait, if this is so simple and powerful, why isn't everyone doing it? And why do most people fail when they try? Most people hear about assuming the wish fulfilled, and they immediately start faking it. They try to force themselves to feel rich, while their bank account screams poverty at them. They attempt to feel loved while scrolling through their ex's social media at 2 a.m. This forced positivity approach is actually making things worse because you're creating internal conflict, and your subconscious mind knows when you're lying to it. The reason your assumptions haven't hardened into fact yet isn't because the law doesn't work. It's because you're not actually assuming anything. You're just hoping really hard and calling it manifestation. There's a massive difference between wishing and assuming. When you wish for something, you're acknowledging its absence. When you assume something, you take it for granted as already true. Think about gravity right now. You're not trying to believe in gravity. You're not affirming that gravity works. You're not raising your vibration to match gravitational frequency. You simply assume gravity exists, and you live from that assumption without question. That's the state you need to occupy regarding your desire. Neville proved this with countless success stories documented in his lectures. A woman assumed she was happily married to a specific man who didn't even know she existed. Within months, circumstances shifted in ways her conscious mind could never have orchestrated, and they got married. She didn't attract him. She didn't manifest him. She assumed the state of being his wife, and reality had to catch up. And here's where most people completely miss the point. They hear this story and think, okay, I'll assume I'm rich for 5 minutes during meditation, and then spend the other 23 hours and 55 minutes of my day worrying about bills. Your assumption needs to become your dwelling place, your natural state, the lens through which you interpret everything. But wait, how do you actually occupy a state when your current reality is screaming the opposite at you? That's what I'm going to break down next, and this technique is something even advanced manifestors miss. Neville talked about states constantly because this is the entire mechanism of creation. A state is a specific attitude of mind, a particular feeling tone about yourself and your relationship to your world. Right now, you're in a state. Maybe it's the state of someone who's searching for answers, someone who wants to change their life, someone who's frustrated with where they are. That state has a feeling, and that feeling is radiating a specific frequency that your subconscious mind interprets as instructions for what to create in your physical reality. The game isn't about changing your circumstances, it's about consciously choosing which state you're going to occupy, and circumstances will follow automatically. Think of states like rooms in an infinite mansion. There's a room where you're wealthy, a room where you're in your ideal relationship, a room where you're healthy and fit, a room where you're successful and fulfilled. All these rooms exist right now simultaneously in consciousness. You're not creating these realities. You're not attracting them from somewhere out there. You're simply moving your awareness into the room that already contains what you want. When a billionaire wakes up in the morning, they don't try to feel rich. They just are rich. That's their natural state. When someone in a loving relationship thinks about their partner, they don't try to feel loved. They simply feel loved because that's the state they occupy. Your job is to find the state of the wish fulfilled and live there regardless of what your physical senses are showing you. Stay with me because in just a moment, I'm going to reveal the exact process Neville used to move between states. But here's what you need to understand first. Every single time you react to your current circumstances as though they're permanent, as though they define you, you're hardening those circumstances into your future. When you check your bank account and feel poor, you just assumed poverty for another day. When you scroll through social media and feel lonely, you just assumed loneliness. When you look in the mirror and criticize your body, you just assumed unworthiness. But if states create reality, and you can choose your state at any moment, what's actually stopping you from assuming the wish fulfilled right now? Here's where Neville's teachings become almost mystical, but also completely practical. He said, imagination is God. Not a metaphor, not poetic language, actual literal truth. Your imagination, your ability to assume a state in your mind, is the creative power of the universe flowing through you. Every single thing that exists in the physical world was first imagined. Your phone, your clothes, the chair you're sitting on, all of it existed in someone's imagination before it existed in reality. But we've been taught to dismiss imagination as fantasy, as make-believe, as something separate from the real world. And this is the conditioning that keeps people trapped in unwanted circumstances their entire lives. Neville proved over and over that an imaginal act, if persisted in, will harden into fact. He taught a specific technique called the state akin to sleep, or satis, where you enter a drowsy state right before falling asleep, and you imagine a scene that implies your wish is already fulfilled. Not a scene of you getting what you want, but a scene that could only happen if you already had it. A woman wanted to marry a specific man. Instead of imagining the proposal or the wedding, she imagined lying in bed wearing a wedding ring, reaching over to touch her husband sleeping next to her, feeling his warmth, feeling the weight of the ring on her finger. She did this every night until it felt natural. Within months, the man proposed. The circumstances that led to it were so natural, so logical in retrospect, that nobody would believe this was conscious creation. But that's how the law works. And here's the part that's going to blow your mind. The imaginal act and the physical fact are the same thing, separated only by time. When you imagine something vividly, when you feel it real, you've already created it in consciousness. The physical manifestation is just the shadow catching up to the substance. But most people imagine for 5 minutes, don't see results the next day, and abandon the state. They go right back to their old assumptions. But wait, if imagination is this powerful, why do people imagine things all day long that never manifest? That's the distinction I'm going to reveal next. And this is what separates deliberate creators from people who are just daydreaming. Your imagination is operating 24 hours a day, whether you're conscious of it or not. Most people are imagining constantly, but they're imagining from their current state of lack. They imagine worst-case scenarios, they replay past failures, they rehearse conversations where they defend themselves, they picture their bank account going lower, they see their health declining, they imagine their relationships falling apart, and then they wonder why their life keeps reflecting these patterns. Uncontrolled imagination is the most destructive force in your life, and you've been doing it unconsciously for so long it feels normal. Neville distinguished between mere daydreaming and controlled, deliberate imagination. Daydreaming is passive, it's entertainment. It has no power because there's no assumption behind it. You can daydream about being a billionaire while simultaneously assuming you're broke and nothing changes. Controlled imagination is when you consciously choose a specific scene that implies your wish fulfilled, you enter into it with sensory vividness, you feel it real, and you persist in that assumption until it becomes your natural state. The difference is intention and feeling. When Neville wanted to travel from Barbados to New York, but had no money and no visa, he didn't just wish for it. Every night he imagined sleeping in his bed in New York, feeling the familiar mattress, hearing the sounds of the city outside his window, assuming he was already there. Within weeks, circumstances arranged themselves in ways that defied logic, and he was in New York. Here's what nobody tells you about this process. The imaginal act needs to be done in a state of feeling it real, not thinking about it, not visualizing it like watching a movie, but experiencing it in first person with sensory vividness until it produces a feeling in your body. That feeling is the signal to your subconscious that this is real, this is now, this is who I am. But wait, if you're supposed to feel it real, how do you feel something that contradicts everything your senses are telling you? That's the technique I saved for later, and it's simpler than you think. Neville's most powerful instruction was to live in the end. Not work toward the end, not hope for the end, not attract the end, but live from the end result as though it's already accomplished. This means you stop reacting to your current circumstances as though they define your reality, and you start responding to life from the state of the wish fulfilled. When someone living in the end receives a bill they can't pay, they don't panic because they're not assuming poverty, they're assuming wealth, so they know the money is coming. When someone living in the end gets rejected, they don't feel unworthy because they're not assuming rejection, they're assuming they're desired and valued, so they know better opportunities are flowing to them. This isn't denial. It's not toxic positivity. It's not pretending everything is fine while your life falls apart. Living in the end is a conscious decision about which state you're going to occupy, regardless of current circumstances. Your circumstances are just old news. They're the result of assumptions you held weeks or months ago. The new assumptions you hold today are creating your future right now. A man wanted a specific job that required qualifications he didn't have. Instead of working on getting those qualifications, instead of figuring out how it could happen, he simply assumed he already had that job. Every night he imagined colleagues congratulating him on his work. He felt the satisfaction of doing what he loved. He heard his new job title when people asked what he did. Within 2 months, the company changed their requirements and hired him despite his lack of formal qualifications. He lived in the end, and reality rearranged itself to match. And here's the tricky part that trips everyone up. Living in the end means you can't be watching for signs. You can't be anxiously checking if it's working. You can't be desperate for proof. Those behaviors come from the state of lack. When you live in the end, you're peaceful, you're certain. You take it for granted that your desire is already yours in consciousness, and therefore must appear in the physical. But how do you maintain this state when doubt creeps in, when circumstances seem to get worse, when nothing appears to be moving? Stay with me, because the answer to this is coming, and it's the most important part of this entire teaching. Neville taught a technique that most people completely overlook, even though it's one of the most powerful tools for changing your reality. It's called revision, and it works by changing the past. Not in some woo-woo time travel sense, but by changing your memory of past events, you change their meaning and therefore their effect on your present and future. Every memory you have is creating your current reality. If you have memories of failure, rejection, poverty, betrayal, those memories are active states within you right now, radiating their frequency, instructing your subconscious to create more of the same. Revision allows you to rewrite those memories and therefore rewrite your story. Here's how it works in practice. Something happens during your day that you don't like. Maybe someone disrespects you. Maybe you get bad news. Maybe you react with anger or fear. Before you go to sleep, you replay that event in your imagination, but you revise it to unfold the way you wish it had happened. If someone was rude to you, imagine them being kind and respectful. If you received bad news, imagine receiving good news. If you panicked, imagine yourself responding with calm confidence. You're not lying to yourself. You're not denying what happened. You're changing the meaning and the feeling associated with that event. The subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between an actual memory and a revised imagined event. When you revise consistently, you begin to shift your entire timeline toward better outcomes. Neville himself used revision constantly. He would revise every negative interaction, every disappointment, every circumstance that didn't match his ideal. And here's what's absolutely wild about this. People in his life would start behaving differently toward him, even though he never told them he was revising. Situations that seemed permanent would suddenly shift. Opportunities would appear out of nowhere. Why? Because when you change your inner state through revision, your outer world has to reorganize to match that new state. But wait, If you can literally change the past through imagination, what else can you change? That's what I'm going to show you next, and this is where Neville's teachings get almost unbelievable, except for the thousands of documented success stories proving it works. This might be the most controversial thing Neville ever taught. He said everyone in your life is you pushed out. Every single person you interact with is reflecting back to you your own assumptions about yourself and about them. If people treat you poorly, it's because you're assuming they will. If you can't find love, it's because you're assuming you're unlovable. If people betray you, it's because somewhere in your consciousness you're expecting betrayal. This isn't victim blaming, this is radical responsibility. And once you understand this, you gain complete power over every relationship in your life because you realize there's no one to change but self. Think about how revolutionary this is. You've been trying to change other people your whole life, trying to make them see your worth, trying to get them to love you, trying to prove yourself, trying to earn respect. But Neville is saying, all of that is backwards. You can't change anyone out there because there is no out there. The entire world is a mirror reflecting your inner states back to you. When you change your assumption about a person, when you imagine them differently, when you occupy a state where they naturally behave the way you want them to, they have no choice but to reflect that new state back to you. A woman used this to heal a toxic relationship with her mother. She stopped reacting to her mother's criticism and instead revised every negative interaction. Every night she imagined her mother being loving and supportive. Within weeks, her mother's behavior completely changed without any conversation or confrontation. And here's where it gets really practical. If someone treats you badly, instead of defending yourself or cutting them off or trying to change them, you simply assume they adore you. You imagine them respecting you, appreciating you, treating you well. You persist in that assumption until it feels natural. Your outer reality has to conform to your inner conviction. But wait, if everyone is me pushed out, does that mean other people don't have free will? Does that mean I'm controlling them? That's a question I get all the time, and the answer is going to challenge everything you think you know about relationships. When people first learn that everyone is you pushed out, they freak out. They think either this makes them responsible for every bad thing that's ever happened to them, or they think they're manipulating people and taking away their free will. Neither is true. You're not creating other people's consciousness. You're creating your experience of them. There's a version of every person that matches every possible state you could occupy. Your mother exists in a state where she's critical and in a state where she's loving. Your boss exists in a state where they undervalue you and in a state where they promote you. You're simply selecting which version you experience by the state you choose to occupy. This is quantum mechanics applied to daily life. In quantum physics, particles exist in all possible states simultaneously until observed. The observer collapses the wave function into one specific reality. You are the observer of your reality. The state you occupy determines which version of people and circumstances you experience. When you change your state, you don't change them. You shift to a parallel reality where a different version of them exists. This is why Neville said, your imagination creates reality. You're not creating something from nothing. You're selecting from infinite possibilities by assuming a specific state. A man used this to change his terrible relationship with his father. Instead of continuing to experience his father's disapproval, he imagined his father being proud of him. He persisted in that state. His father didn't suddenly become a different person, but the version of his father that existed in the new state the man occupied was completely different. Drop in the comments if this makes sense, or if I'm crazy, because this is where most people either get it and their entire life transforms, or they dismiss it and stay stuck. But here's what you need to understand. If you reject this teaching because it feels uncomfortable or impossible, you're choosing to remain a victim of circumstances. If you accept it and test it, you become the conscious creator of your experience. But wait, if I can select any version of reality by choosing a state, how do I actually choose and maintain a state when my current circumstances feel so solid and unchangeable? That's the practical technique I've been building toward, and I'm about to give you the exact process. This is Neville's primary technique, and once you master this, everything else falls into place. The state akin to sleep is that drowsy feeling right before you fall asleep at night or right as you're waking up in the morning. In this state, your conscious critical mind is relaxed and your subconscious mind is highly receptive to suggestion. This is when you do your imaginal act. You don't need hours of meditation, you don't need to be in perfect conditions, you just need to be drowsy, and then you imagine a scene that implies your wish is fulfilled. Here's the exact process. First, identify what you want, but immediately translate it into a scene that implies you already have it. Don't imagine getting it. Imagine something that could only happen if you already have it. If you want money, don't imagine receiving money. Imagine yourself spending freely. Or maybe imagine a friend asking how you got so wealthy. Or imagine checking your bank account and seeing the large balance. If you want a relationship, don't imagine meeting the person. Imagine lying next to them, or imagine introducing them as your partner, or imagine them saying, "I love you." The scene needs to be short, simple, sensory, and it needs to produce a feeling. Second, as you're falling asleep, enter into this scene in first person. See through your own eyes, feel sensations in your body, hear sounds, make it as vivid as possible. Third, loop this scene over and over with feeling until you fall asleep. The goal is to fall asleep in the assumption that your desire is already fulfilled. And here's the secret that makes this technique work when nothing else does. You're not trying to convince your subconscious mind of anything. You're not forcing belief. You're simply falling asleep in a state. And whatever state you fall asleep in, you're instructing your subconscious to create more of. If you fall asleep worried about money, you're ordering more worry. If you fall asleep feeling loved, you're ordering more love. If you fall asleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you're giving your subconscious the blueprint for your new reality. But here's where most people mess this up completely, and I'm going to show you the mistakes that kill your results before they even start. Mistake number 1. You're checking for results constantly. Every morning you wake up and immediately scan your physical reality to see if anything changed. You check your phone hoping for the text, you check your bank account hoping for money, you look for signs that it's working. This behavior is radiating the state of lack. It's telling your subconscious mind that you don't actually have what you want. You're still waiting for it. When you truly assume something is yours, you don't look for it anxiously. You take it for granted. Someone who assumes they're wealthy doesn't wake up shocked to find money in their account. They expect it. Someone who assumes they're loved doesn't desperately check their phone. They know the love is there. Stop checking. Start living in the end. Mistake number 2. You're doing the technique while simultaneously thinking about how it's going to happen. You imagine the end result, but then your mind starts calculating paths, figuring out logistics, worrying about whether it's possible. The how is not your concern. Your job is to assume the end. Consciousness will handle the how. Neville said, "Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and the subconscious will build the bridge of incidents to make it so." When you try to figure out how it's going to happen, you're limiting infinite possibilities to your finite human logic. The universe has a million ways to deliver your desire that your conscious mind could never conceive. Trust the process and stay in the state. Mistake number 3. you're doing sats for 5 nights, not seeing physical results, and giving up. Neville said, persist until you feel it real, until the assumption becomes natural, until you can think about your desire and feel satisfied rather than desperate. This might take a week. It might take a month. The length of time doesn't matter. What matters is that you saturate your consciousness with the new assumption until the old state dies. If you plant a seed and dig it up every few days to check if it's growing, it never grows. Plant your imaginal seed, water it with persistence, and trust it's growing beneath the surface. Stay with me, because I'm about to reveal the one thing that determines whether your manifestation happens in days or takes years. After you've done your imaginal act, after you've fallen asleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, there comes a moment that Neville called the Sabbath. The Sabbath is when you rest from your work because you know it's done. You've planted the seed, now you let it grow. This is the state of perfect faith, perfect knowing, perfect trust. You're not wondering if it's going to happen, you're not looking for proof, you're not anxious or desperate. You simply know that what you've imagined in consciousness is already done, and the physical manifestation is just a matter of time, just the shadow catching up to the substance. Most people never reach the Sabbath because they keep interfering with their manifestation. They do SATs one night, wake up and check if anything changed, feel disappointed, question if it's working, start doubting, then do SATs again from a state of lack. This is like planting a seed, digging it up, replanting it somewhere else, digging it up again, moving it again. The seed never has a chance to grow. The Sabbath is when you're done. You've done your work in imagination. You've assumed the state. Now you let it be. You go about your life. You handle your responsibilities. You take inspired action when it feels natural. But you're not forcing. You're not chasing. You're not desperately trying to make it happen. You know it's already done in consciousness, and that's the only place it needs to be done. And here's the part that feels almost magical when you experience it. When you truly reach the Sabbath, when you truly rest in the assumption that it's done, circumstances begin shifting in ways that feel natural and effortless. You don't notice them as miracles, you notice them as logical sequences of events. The job offer comes through a friend. The money appears from an unexpected source. The person you're manifesting suddenly reaches out. And when it happens, it feels inevitable, like it was always meant to be, because from the perspective of consciousness, it was always meant to be. You created it in imagination weeks ago. But how do you know if you've truly reached the Sabbath, or if you're just pretending and hoping? That's the test I'm going to give you right now. Here's how you know if you've successfully assumed the wish fulfilled. Ask yourself this question and be brutally honest. When you think about your desire right now, do you feel satisfied or do you feel wanting? If you feel wanting, needing, desperate, anxious, impatient, you're still in the state of lack. You're still assuming you don't have it. If you feel satisfied, peaceful, certain, knowing it's yours, you've assumed the wish fulfilled. Neville said the feeling is the secret. That feeling of satisfaction, that feeling of it's already done, that's your confirmation that you've successfully impressed your subconscious mind with the new assumption. Another test is how you respond to contradictory evidence. If something happens in your physical reality that contradicts your desire, do you react emotionally and start doubting? Or do you remain unmoved, knowing that the outer world is just catching up to your inner assumption? Someone manifesting money might get an unexpected bill. If they panic, they're back in lack. If they remain calm, trusting that money is flowing to them, they're in the Sabbath. Someone manifesting a relationship might see their person with someone else. If they feel devastated, they're in lack. If they remain unbothered, knowing that everyone is them pushed out, and their assumption determines their experience. They're in the Sabbath. Your reaction to circumstances reveals your true state. Here's what I want you to do right now. Think about the one thing you want most. Close your eyes for just a moment and imagine you already have it. How does that feel? Relief? Joy? Peace? That feeling is available to you right now before you have any physical evidence. That feeling is the wish fulfilled. Your job is to return to that feeling as often as possible until it becomes your natural state. But wait, what if you've been assuming the wrong thing? What if your desire isn't what you actually need? What if you're blocking something better? That's the final piece of this puzzle, and it's going to reframe everything I've told you so far. The biggest mistake people make is they decide exactly how their desire should manifest and exactly when it should appear. They want a specific person, a specific job, a specific amount of money, and they want it by Friday. When it doesn't happen exactly as they imagined, exactly when they demanded, they decide manifestation doesn't work. But Neville taught that you should focus on the end result, the feeling, the state, and let consciousness deliver it in the best possible way, at the best possible time. Sometimes what you think you want is actually a limitation compared to what consciousness wants to give you. A woman wanted to marry a specific man who was treating her terribly. She tried to manifest him using Neville's techniques, but it wasn't working. Then she shifted her focus. Instead of trying to manifest that specific man, she imagined the feeling of being in a loving, secure relationship. She fell asleep every night, feeling cherished, valued, safe. Within months, she met someone completely different. Someone who treated her like a queen. Someone she never would have found if she'd been fixated on the wrong person. The specific person was her conscious mind's limited idea of what she wanted. The feeling of being loved was what she actually wanted, and consciousness delivered something far better than she could have orchestrated. This is why Neville said to focus on the wish fulfilled, not the specific path to get there. If you want money, assume you're wealthy, but don't dictate that it has to come from a promotion or a lottery win or a specific business deal. Let consciousness surprise you with the perfect path. If you want love, assume you're loved, but don't limit yourself to one person. There might be someone even better that you don't know exists yet. If you want success, assume you're successful, but don't limit the form that success takes. The version of success consciousness has in store for you might be bigger and better than you can currently imagine. But how do you balance having a specific desire while also staying open? That's the art of assumption, and I'm going to show you exactly how to master it. There's a subtle but critical distinction here. You can be specific about the end result, the feeling, the state you want to occupy, but you stay flexible about how it manifests. If you want a specific person, you can imagine being with them, but you don't script every conversation. You don't force specific timelines. You don't obsess over making it happen. You assume the state of being with them, you feel it real, and then you detach from controlling the process. If consciousness brings you together, perfect. If consciousness brings you someone even better, perfect. Either way, you get what you actually want, which is the feeling of being loved. Neville himself manifested a specific woman he wanted to marry. He imagined her as his wife. He fell asleep nightly in that assumption. But he didn't chase her. He didn't try to force anything. He simply lived in the state of being married to her and let events unfold naturally. They got married, but here's what's interesting. He also taught that if you assume a state and something different manifests, it means that different thing is actually better aligned with your true desire. Trust the process. Your conscious mind has limited knowledge. Your subconscious mind, connected to infinite intelligence, knows the best path to your happiness. So here's the balance. Be specific about your desire. Imagine it vividly. Assume the feeling of it being fulfilled, but then release attachment to controlling how and when it happens. This isn't the same as not caring. You care deeply about the end result. You're just not micromanaging the universe. You're not desperately trying to force specific paths. You're allowing consciousness to orchestrate the perfect sequence of events. And here's what's beautiful about this. When you truly let go of the how and the when you rest in the Sabbath, things manifest faster and more beautifully than you could have planned. Now you have everything you need to consciously create your reality. But there's one final element that ties this all together, and it's the most important part. Everything I've taught you comes down to this. Your self-concept, your assumption about who you are, determines your entire experience of reality. If you assume you're someone who struggles financially, you'll find evidence of struggle everywhere. If you assume you're someone who's always rejected, you'll be rejected. If you assume you're lucky, blessed, successful, loved, powerful, you'll experience a reality that matches those assumptions. Neville said, "Your assumption about yourself is your destiny. Not your desires, not your goals, not your vision board. Your assumption about who you are right now in this moment." This is why affirmations often don't work. You're saying, "I am wealthy," while simultaneously assuming I'm broke. The assumption wins every time. Your self-concept is the sum of all your beliefs about yourself, and it's operating 24/7, creating your reality. The good news is you can change your self-concept right now by assuming a new one. You don't need permission. You don't need to earn it. You don't need to become worthy first. You simply assume you're already the person you want to be, and you persist in that assumption until it becomes natural. A man assumed he was confident and successful even though he was unemployed and socially anxious. Every interaction, he acted from that assumption. Within 6 months, his entire life transformed. He got a great job, his relationships improved, his anxiety disappeared. He became the person he assumed he was. Think about the self-concept you're currently wearing like a suit of clothes. Is it serving you? Is it creating the life you want? If not, you have the power to change it right now. Not by working on yourself, not by fixing your flaws, not by becoming good enough. You change it by assuming a new self-concept and refusing to accept any evidence to the contrary. When something contradicts your new assumption, you revise it. When doubt creeps in, you return to your imaginal act. When circumstances look bad, you remain in the Sabbath knowing that your inner state is the only state that matters. Your self-concept is the foundation of everything, and once you get this right, specific manifestations become almost effortless. And here's what most people never realize until it's too late. You've been unconsciously assuming a self-concept your entire life based on childhood programming, past failures, other people's opinions, societal conditioning. None of that is who you actually are. You are pure consciousness having a human experience. You have the power to assume any identity you choose. You can be wealthy, loved, successful, healthy, powerful, free. Not someday, not when circumstances change, right now in consciousness. The question is, will you claim that power or will you keep giving it away to your circumstances? Because I'm about to show you what happens when you fully step into your power as a conscious creator. When you assume a state and persist in it until it feels natural, consciousness begins building what Neville called the bridge of incidents. These are the series of events, encounters, opportunities, and circumstances that naturally lead from where you are to where you want to be. You don't build the bridge. You don't figure out the steps. You don't force doors open. You assume the end and the bridge appears beneath your feet. This is where manifestation starts to feel magical, because things happen in ways you never could have predicted or planned. A man assumed he owned his dream home even though he couldn't afford it, and the house wasn't for sale. He imagined sleeping in that house every night, feeling the specific rooms, walking through the space as if it were his. 3 months later, the owner unexpectedly decided to sell and offered it to him at a price he could afford through a financing option he didn't know existed. The bridge of incidents included a job opportunity that increased his income, a chance meeting with a mortgage broker, the seller's sudden decision to move, timing that aligned perfectly. None of this was forced. All of it flowed naturally from his assumption. Stay till the end because I'm going to reveal the most powerful example of the bridge of incidents that proves this isn't just positive thinking. This is how reality actually works. But here's what you need to understand about the bridge. Sometimes it includes events that look negative. You might lose a job that was blocking your dream career. You might end a relationship that was keeping you from your ideal partner. You might face challenges that are actually redirecting you toward something better. Don't judge the bridge. Don't panic when things seem to fall apart. Trust that if you're holding your assumption, everything is working in your favor, even when it doesn't look like it. Now, let me show you how this works with something almost everyone wants. Money is where most people get stuck, because they're so focused on their current lack that they can't assume abundance. They check their bank account, and the number dictates their state. They receive a bill and panic. They see rich people and feel envious or resentful. Every one of these reactions is an assumption of poverty, and it's creating more poverty. If you want money using Neville's method, you need to completely shift your relationship with money by assuming you're already the wealthy version of yourself. Here's exactly how to do it. First, decide on a specific amount or a specific feeling of financial freedom. If a specific number feels too far-fetched, focus on the feeling of being financially secure, of spending freely without worry, of knowing money flows to you easily. Second, create a scene that implies you have this money. Maybe you imagine checking your investment account and seeing a large balance. Maybe you imagine a friend asking how you became so successful. Maybe you imagine making a large purchase without hesitation. Keep it simple. Make it sensory. Attach feeling to it. Third, do this scene in sats every night. Fall asleep feeling wealthy. Fourth, during your day, whenever you think about money, return to that feeling of wealth. Don't monitor your bank account obsessively. Don't panic over bills. Stay in the state. And here's the part that's counterintuitive. When you're truly assuming wealth, you might feel called to take certain actions, but they won't feel desperate or forced. You might apply for a new job, start a side business, make an investment, but you're doing these things from a state of abundance, not from fear of lack. The energy is completely different, and that energy determines your results. A woman assumed she was financially free. She did her imaginal act nightly. Within 2 weeks, she got an unexpected tax refund, a new client reached out, and she found money she forgot she had. Within 3 months, her income doubled. She didn't work harder, she didn't hustle more, she simply assumed wealth and opportunities appeared on the bridge of incidents. But what about manifesting something that seems completely impossible? Something that requires other people to cooperate? That's what I'm covering next. This is the most controversial application of Neville's teachings. People ask, can I manifest a specific person? And the answer is, yes, you can. But you need to understand what you're actually doing. You're not controlling anyone's free will. You're not forcing anyone to love you. You're shifting to a reality where the version of that person who wants to be with you exists. Remember, everyone is you pushed out. If someone is cold to you, distant from you, unavailable to you, it's because you're assuming they are. Change your assumption about them, and your experience of them must change. Here's the technique for manifesting a specific person or healing any relationship. First, stop reacting to their current behavior. Every time you feel hurt, rejected, ignored, you're assuming that's who they are and you're reinforcing it. Second, decide how you want them to be: loving, attentive, committed, whatever you desire. Third, imagine a scene that implies they already are that way. Don't imagine them changing. Imagine them already changed. Maybe you imagine them saying, "I love you." Maybe you imagine them introducing you as their partner. Maybe you imagine a conversation where they express how much they value you. Fourth, do this scene in sets and fall asleep feeling loved by them. Fifth, revise every negative interaction. If they ignored your text, revise it so they responded warmly. If they canceled plans, revise it so they showed up excited to see you. Now here's the critical part. While you're doing this, you cannot be obsessing over them, stalking their social media, anxiously waiting for contact, feeling desperate or needy. Those behaviors are the state of lack, and they push away what you want. You need to feel satisfied, like you already have their love. You need to go about your life from the assumption that they adore you, even if current evidence suggests otherwise. A woman used this exact process with a man who ghosted her. She revised every interaction, imagined him being devoted to her, fell asleep feeling loved. She stopped checking his social media, stopped analyzing what went wrong, just held her assumption. 3 weeks later, he reached out, apologizing, and they're now in a committed relationship. The bridge of incidents brought him back in a natural way that made sense. But here's the question you need to ask yourself before manifesting a specific person. Here's where I'm going to challenge you. When you want a specific person, what you actually want is how you think they'll make you feel. Loved, desired, secure, valued, worthy. But here's the truth Neville taught. You can have that feeling right now by assuming it. You don't need a specific person to give it to you. In fact, if you need someone external to make you feel worthy, you're giving away your power, and you'll always be at the mercy of their behavior. But if you assume you're worthy, if you feel loved from within, you become magnetic to love from all directions. So before you decide to manifest a specific person, ask yourself this. If you assumed you were deeply loved, desired, and valued right now, would you still want that specific person, or would you be open to someone even better? Sometimes we fixate on one person because we think they're our only option. But from the perspective of infinite possibilities, there might be someone who's a better match, who loves you more easily, who's more available. When you assume the feeling of being loved without attaching it to one specific person, you allow consciousness to bring you the best possible match. This doesn't mean you can't manifest a specific person. It just means you stay open to something better, if that's what consciousness has in store. A man spent months trying to manifest a woman who kept rejecting him. Finally, he shifted his focus. Instead of imagining her specifically, he imagined the feeling of being in an amazing relationship. He let go of attachment to her. Within weeks, she reached out, but by then he'd met someone new who was a much better fit. He manifested the feeling, and the feeling came with a better vessel than he'd originally chosen. Drop in the comments whether you think you should always go for a specific person or stay open to something better. But either way, the principle is the same. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and let consciousness handle the details. Now let me show you how to handle the biggest obstacle that stops most manifestations from ever happening. Doubt is the killer of manifestations. You do your imaginal act, you feel it real, you fall asleep in the wish fulfilled, and then you wake up the next morning and nothing has changed. The bills are still there, the person hasn't texted, the opportunity hasn't appeared. Your rational mind says, "See, this doesn't work. You're wasting your time." This is the moment where most people abandon their assumption and go back to their old state. But this is also the moment where your faith is tested and your manifestation is either solidified or destroyed. Neville said, "The outer world is a delayed reflection of your inner state." There's a time lag. When you change your assumption today, your outer world is still reflecting assumptions you held last week or last month. This is why persistence is critical. You need to hold your new assumption long enough for the outer world to catch up. When you see contradictory evidence, you have two choices. You can react to it emotionally, accept it as proof that your desire isn't coming, and collapse back into lack. Or you can remain unmoved, knowing that what you see is old news, and your new assumption is creating your new reality right now, even if you can't see it yet. Here's the practical technique for handling doubt. When doubt arises, don't fight it. Don't feel guilty about it. Just return to your imaginal scene. Close your eyes for 30 seconds and re-enter the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Remind yourself that consciousness is the only reality and your current circumstances are just shadows. Do this as many times as you need throughout the day. Eventually, the doubt loses its power and your assumption becomes dominant. But here's what you absolutely cannot do. You cannot waver back and forth between states. One day, assuming wealth. The next day, panicking about bills. One day, assuming love. The next day, feeling rejected. Pick your state and stay there no matter what. The unwavering assumption is what hardens into fact. And in 2 minutes, I'm going to give you the most powerful case study of persistence that will prove this works if you stick with it. Neville talked about mental diets constantly. A mental diet is where you monitor your thoughts throughout the day and refuse to think anything that contradicts your desired state. If you're manifesting wealth, you don't allow thoughts of poverty. If you're manifesting health, you don't allow thoughts of sickness. If you're manifesting love, you don't allow thoughts of rejection or unworthiness. This sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest disciplines because we've been trained to think negatively, to worry, to expect the worst. Here's how to implement a mental diet. For the next 7 days, commit to this practice. Every time you catch yourself thinking or saying something that contradicts your desired state, stop immediately. Don't judge yourself, just stop and redirect. Replace the negative thought with the assumption of your wish fulfilled. If you catch yourself thinking, "I can't afford this," stop and think, "I'm wealthy. Money flows to me easily." If you catch yourself thinking, "They don't love me," stop and think, "I am deeply loved." You're not suppressing negative thoughts. You're not denying reality. You're consciously choosing which thoughts you're going to feed and which thoughts you're going to starve. The first few days will be hard because you'll realize how much negative thinking you do unconsciously. But by day 4 or 5, the new thinking starts to feel more natural. By day 7, your entire inner world shifts. And when your inner world shifts, your outer world has no choice but to follow. Neville said, "A mental diet is the fastest way to change your state, and therefore change your reality." But here's the trap most people fall into. They go on a mental diet for 2 days, slip up, think a negative thought, and then beat themselves up and give up entirely. Don't do that. This isn't about perfection. It's about consistency and redirection. Every time you catch a negative thought and redirect it, you're training your mind. That's the work. Now, let me give you the example I promised that shows what happens when you persist no matter what. Neville Goddard himself provided the most powerful proof of his teachings through his own life. During World War II, Neville was in the military, and he desperately wanted to get out. He had speaking engagements, students waiting, a life he wanted to return to. But getting out of the military during wartime was essentially impossible. There were regulations, protocols, no legitimate path to discharge. Most people would have accepted their fate. Neville decided to assume he was already out. Every single night, he imagined himself in his home in New York, sleeping in his own bed, living as a civilian. He felt the sheets, heard the sounds of the city, experienced being discharged as if it had already happened. He did this despite everyone telling him it was impossible, despite no logical path existing, despite all evidence suggesting he'd be stuck in the military until the war ended. He persisted for weeks. His commanding officer denied his request. He persisted. Regulations prevented it. He persisted. He fell asleep every night in the assumption that he was already home. Within about a month, circumstances shifted in ways that defied all logic and protocol. His commanding officer suddenly reconsidered. Red tape dissolved. He received an honorable discharge that by all military standards should never have been approved. He was home in New York exactly as he had imagined. This wasn't luck. This wasn't coincidence. This was the law in action. Neville assumed the end, persisted in his assumption despite contradictory evidence, and reality reorganized itself to match his inner conviction. If he could manifest an impossible military discharge during wartime, what excuse do you have for not manifesting your desires? The same power that worked for him lives in you right now. You now know everything Neville taught about conscious creation. You understand states, you understand assumption, you understand assets, you understand revision, you understand mental diets. You have the complete toolkit. But here's the brutal truth. Most people who learn this information will not apply it. They'll listen to this video, feel inspired, maybe try Satus for one night, and then go right back to their old patterns. Why? Because changing your state requires you to stop being who you've been. And most people are addicted to their current identity, even when it's creating suffering. You've been assuming lack for years, maybe decades. That assumption feels familiar. It feels safe in a weird way. It's who you think you are. Stepping into a new assumption feels uncomfortable. It feels fake. It feels like you're lying to yourself. Your ego wants to stay in control, and your ego is identified with your current circumstances. When you start assuming something different, your ego panics and floods you with doubt, fear, logical arguments for why it won't work. This is the resistance every creator faces. The question is, will you push through it or will you give in to it? Here's what separates people who successfully manifest from people who don't. It's not intelligence, it's not worthiness, it's not special gifts. It's simply the willingness to persist in a new assumption, even when everything in your current reality is screaming that it's not true. It's the faith to keep falling asleep in the wish fulfilled even when you wake up to the same circumstances. It's the discipline to maintain a mental diet even when negative thoughts feel overwhelming. It's the courage to assume you're already the person you want to be even when you feel like an imposter. If you can do these things, your life will transform in ways that will seem miraculous to others, but inevitable to you. Now I'm going to give you your action plan to start seeing results immediately. Here's what I want you to do for the next 30 days. This is your commitment to yourself, your decision to test these teachings and prove to yourself that consciousness creates reality. Day 1 through 7, pick one specific desire. Just one. Make it something you want, but don't have desperate attachment to. Something you can practice with. Create a scene that implies that desire is fulfilled. Every single night, do sats with that scene. Fall asleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. During the day, practice a mental diet. Every time you catch yourself thinking something that contradicts your desire, redirect to your assumption. Day 8 through 14, add revision to your practice. Every night before sats, Revise anything from your day that you didn't like. Revise negative interactions, disappointing news, moments of fear or doubt. Then do your SATS scene. You're training your consciousness to reject anything that doesn't match your desired state. Continue your mental diet. By week 2, it should feel more natural. Day 15 through 21. Start living in the end during your waking hours. Make small decisions from the state of the wish fulfilled. If you're manifesting wealth, how would a wealthy person handle this situation? If you're manifesting love, how would someone who's deeply loved show up right now? You're trying on your new state, like new clothes, until it fits naturally. Day 22 through 30. Practice the Sabbath. You've planted the seed, now rest. Continue SATS if it feels natural, but release attachment to when and how it manifests. Go about your life knowing it's already done in consciousness. Stay in your state, but stop obsessing. Notice what starts to shift. Pay attention to the bridge of incidents appearing. By day 30, you will have tangible proof that this works. And more importantly, you will have built the habit of conscious creation. This isn't a one-time manifestation, this is a new way of living. This is you claiming your power as the creator of your reality. Comment below what desire you're going to focus on for these 30 days, and I'll be checking in. I answer everyone. Here's something Neville taught that blows people's minds. Time is an illusion created by consciousness. Past, present, and future exist simultaneously. When you imagine something, when you assume a state, you're not creating something in the future, you're selecting a reality that already exists in the infinite now. The manifestation doesn't need to be created, it already exists. It just needs to be selected by your assumption. And then time unfolds the sequence of events that make it appear in your physical reality. This is why some manifestations happen instantly and some take weeks or months. It's not about the universe needing time to arrange things. It's about how long it takes you to fully assume the new state, to embody the new identity, to become the person who has what you want. The moment you truly assume it, the moment you genuinely feel it's already done, the physical manifestation is inevitable. It's already happened in consciousness, and consciousness is the only reality. The physical world is just the shadow catching up. Think about this carefully. If you truly believed you won the lottery yesterday, you wouldn't be anxious about money today. You'd be calm, certain, making plans for your new wealth. That state of certainty is what manifests, not the hoping, not the wishing, the absolute knowing. When you reach that level of faith where you take it completely for granted, manifestation becomes instantaneous, or nearly so, because there's no resistance, no doubt, no wavering. But how do you reach that level of faith when your current circumstances are so contrary to what you want? That's what I'm about to reveal, and it's the missing piece that makes everything else work. People hear about Neville's teachings and think it's just affirmations with extra steps. It's not. Affirmations are conscious mind techniques where you repeat phrases hoping to convince yourself of something you don't believe. Assumptions are subconscious. An assumption is something you take for granted without question. You assume gravity works. You don't affirm it. You assume your name is your name. You don't need to convince yourself. That level of acceptance, that complete taking for granted, that's what your desire needs. Here's why affirmations often fail. You say, "I am wealthy," 100 times in the mirror while your subconscious mind is screaming, "You're broke. Look at your bank account." The subconscious always wins. It doesn't matter what you say, it matters what you assume. But here's how to turn an affirmation into an assumption. Attach feeling to it. Instead of robotically repeating, "I am wealthy," close your eyes and feel what it would feel like to be wealthy. Feel the relief, the freedom, the security. Feel it in your body. That feeling is communicating with your subconscious in a language it understands. Do this enough times, and the assumption starts to take root. Neville didn't teach affirmations, he taught assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Feeling is the secret. Not the words, not the visualization, the feeling. When you truly feel it, you've assumed it. And once you've assumed it, the manifestation is automatic. But here's where people get confused. They think they need to maintain this intense feeling 24 hours a day. You don't. You just need to impress it deeply enough that it becomes your natural state, your default assumption. Then you can go about your life and let it unfold. The work is impressing the subconscious, not maintaining constant emotional intensity. Now let me show you the one technique that impressed my subconscious faster than anything else. This is one of Neville's most powerful but underused techniques. It's called I remember when, and it works by speaking from the future as if your desire has already manifested and is now in your past. Instead of saying, I want to be wealthy, you say, I remember when I used to worry about money. Instead of saying, I want to find love, you say, I remember when I was single. You're training your consciousness to see your current undesired state as the past and your desired state as the present. Here's how to practice this. Throughout your day, whenever you think about your desire, frame it as a memory of overcoming your current situation. I remember when I didn't have this money. I remember when I hadn't met them yet. I remember when I was working at that job I hated. You're speaking as the future version of yourself who already has what you want, looking back at where you used to be. This does something powerful to your psychology. It makes your current circumstances feel temporary, like something you've already moved past, and it makes your desire feel current, like something you already have. Combine this with your SATS practice and your mental diet, and you create an unshakable assumption. In SATS, you're experiencing the wish fulfilled. During the day, you're remembering when you didn't have it, which implies you have it now. You're surrounding your consciousness with the assumption from every angle. A man used this technique to manifest a promotion. Every time he thought about his current position, he'd say, I remember when I was just starting out, before I got promoted to manager. He did this for 3 weeks. His boss called him in and offered him the exact promotion he'd been assuming. The bridge of incidents made it seem natural, but he knew he'd created it in consciousness first. Now, here's the final and most important teaching that ties everything together. This is the core of Neville's entire philosophy. And once you truly understand this, everything else makes perfect sense. Neville taught that you are not separate from God. You are God experiencing yourself through a human body and mind. Your imagination is God's creative power flowing through you. When you imagine something and feel it real, you're not asking God for permission. You're not hoping God grants your wish. You are God creating your reality. This is not blasphemy. This is not ego. This is the mystical truth at the heart of all spiritual traditions when you strip away the dogma. If you are God in human form, then nothing is impossible for you. There are no limitations except the ones you accept. You don't need to earn anything, deserve anything, work for anything. You simply assume it, and it's yours. This is why Neville said to be anxious for nothing. Anxiety comes from forgetting who you are. When you remember you're the creator of your reality, what is there to be anxious about? You can create anything. You can assume any state. You can select any reality. The power that created the entire universe is literally the power of your imagination and your consciousness. Most people live their entire lives as victims of circumstances, never realizing they're the creator of those circumstances. They pray to an external God hoping for rescue, never knowing they are the God they're praying to. When you truly accept this, When you truly know yourself as God in human form, manifestation stops being something you do and starts being who you are. You are always manifesting. The question is, are you doing it consciously or unconsciously? Are you creating your desired reality, or are you creating by default based on old programming? Now you have the knowledge. The only question is, will you use it? Now you have the exact method to consciously create any reality you desire. You understand that assumption hardens into fact. You know that consciousness is the only reality, and your outer world is consciousness pushed out. You've learned sets, revision, mental diets, living in the end, and the Sabbath. You know that everyone is you pushed out, and your self-concept determines your destiny. You understand that imagination is God, and you are God in human form, wielding infinite creative power through your consciousness. This isn't theory. This isn't philosophy. This is practical mysticism that works when you apply it. The choice is yours now. You can go back to being a victim of circumstances, waiting for external conditions to change, hoping the universe will smile upon you. Or you can claim your power as the conscious creator of your reality and start assuming the life you want right now in this moment. You can keep trying to attract things as if they're separate from you, or you can assume you already are the person who has those things and watch reality reorganize itself to match your inner conviction. You can remain stuck in old patterns and old identities, or you can die to who you've been and be reborn as who you choose to be. I've given you everything Neville taught. I've shown you the exact techniques he used to transform his own life and the lives of thousands of students. The proof is in the testing. For the next 30 days, apply these methods. Pick one desire, create your scene, do sets every night, maintain your mental diet, revise your day, live in the end, and see what happens. If nothing changes, you've lost nothing but 30 days. But if it works, and I promise you it will if you persist, you've gained everything. You've discovered the secret of conscious creation that most people live and die without ever knowing. Subscribe and hit the bell icon because I'm going deep into more of Neville's advanced teachings, specific techniques for money, love, health, success, and I'm breaking down case studies of people who've used these methods to create quote-unquote miracles. These aren't miracles. They're the natural result of understanding how consciousness creates reality. Comment below which of these techniques you're going to test today. Tell me your specific desire for the 30-day challenge. Tell me if you've already had success with Neville's teachings. I read every comment, I answer everyone, and I want to hear your transformation stories. The only thing standing between you and the life of your dreams is the assumption you're willing to hold, and now you know exactly how to hold it. Like this video right now, if you made it this far because you're serious about transformation. Share this with someone who needs to hear this message. And remember, you're not trying to attract your desires. You're not waiting for permission. You're not hoping the universe cooperates. You are assuming the wish fulfilled right now, and that assumption is already done in consciousness, which means it's already done in fact. You just need to persist until the shadow catches up to the substance. Now go create your reality consciously. You have the power. You've always had the power. You just needed to be reminded. I'll see you in the next video, where we go even deeper.